Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Loaded up on the program today is Tennessee with another commitment. No, not a quarterback in 26 this time. One that is down the line, but one that I think gives us an opportunity to look at some in-state talent. So we'll do that. Tennessee ranked number 15 in the coaches poll. What teams are underrated, overrated in the coaches poll? And also, let's be honest, we'll talk about the coaches poll. And do we see that maybe some sports information directors are handling some of these votes? Tennessee's offensive line depth, they say it's very good. I still have my questions about that. The stat of the day, this day in Tennessee football history, it's a big show lined up. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am good. How are you doing, Dave?
Never better. Ready to get up and rolling. And it's time for today's tough question. And that is brought to you by our good friends at Work Trucks.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, here's my question, and it's on our YouTube page, and we want you to vote for it right now because the knockout round has begun with the basketball in the Olympics, as they call it. And so I ask, would you rather win the USA win hoops gold or the Vols win an SEC but not a natty? So far, everybody says what you said this morning in our 3:45 a.m. production meeting, Caleb, and that is everybody says the Vols. Nobody has said the U.S. Winning the gold. We're going to move on, talk about the commitment, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you that if the U.S. doesn't win the gold, that would be a shame. It wouldn't be a shame if Tennessee didn't win the SEC.
Yeah, but again, and I've always been this way. Who cares about the Olympics that much? I'm sorry. Guys, y'all can hate me all day for this. The Olympics is a racket. It's a racket for a bunch of I'm sorry, I can go into details on it, but one, they should be getting paid. The athletes should be getting paid in the Olympics, given the money they bring in. I'm just going to say it. And I would.
Basketball players are making like $5 million
to actually play in it.
Yes, I mean
they negotiated something. I don't care about the Olympics. I have no respect for the Olympic Committee. I never have. Guys, go look up how what they do to poor and oppressed people in different countries to build these stadiums.
Yes. Only FIFA is worse. Let's move on.
Yes.
Tennessee football recruiting, and the Vols pick up a tight end, one that maybe doesn't pop off the page immediately, but I believe is a big pickup. What can you tell us about the Vols' latest commitment, Caleb Calhoun? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so here's the thing. Carson Sneed is a very interesting pickup. He's a 3-star on 247 Sports, a 4-star on 247 Sports composite. Coming out of Donaldson Christian Academy in Nashville. Tennessee beat out. Now, these are some heavy hitters, guys. If you look at last season and the success that was had and just the nature of Blue Bloods, the schools Tennessee beat out, they should be proud about because they beat out Ohio State. Beating out Ohio State is always a win, right? They beat out Louisville, who, by the way, has a very cutting-edge offense with Jeff Brom. Tight ends would want to go play there. And they beat out Ole Miss. And let's be honest, Jeff Brom and Lane Kiffin are a threat to Josh Heupel with recruiting offensive talent as much as anybody. Because whatever you think about them defensively, they can coach offense.
Along those lines, we didn't mention this yesterday, but we should have. Right up there with Heupel, wouldn't you have to rate Lane Kiffin as one of the best recruiting coaches of quarterbacks? You know, we let his name slip yesterday. I think Lane and Josh Heupel, because of their styles and their age, are going to be somewhat rivals for the foreseeable future. And, of course, the fact that Tennessee hired Lane Kiffin and he left only enhances that potential rivalry.
I agree. That's a huge deal with it, and there's going to be more fights over this long term. It'll go into overdrive if Lane Kiffin goes to Florida next year. I mean, could you imagine, Dave, Lane Kiffin in Florida, how much Tennessee would want to beat out Lane Kiffin for everything at that point? So, but it's still a thing for Ole Miss, and I think Tennessee, Carson Sneed, if you look at him, very good at making catches and coverage. He outruns defensive backs. He's pretty athletic for a tight end, 6'6", 6'5", 235. Now, here's the caveat. I'm not just going to mention the whole coming from Nashville and that prospects are overvalued from Nashville. That does not mean Nashville prospects aren't good, guys. I want to be very clear on this. Nashville prospects are good. What it means is if there's a 3-star from Nashville, recruiting services will give them a 4th star because they are so tied into the city of Nashville. They're a lot of them are based out of there. So they just cover them a lot more.
Now, it's worth noting that I believe that 247 Sports is still
they still have him a 3-star.
Nashville. Are they still in Nashville?
Yeah, 247 Sports is I believe is in Nashville.
So this would kind of go against your point, right? That they have him as a 3-star.
Yes, and Composite has him as a 4-star. You are right. However, on threes
in Nashville too.
Yeah, on threes in Nashville has him as a 4-star. So let's go. So yeah, basically, he's a 3-star on 247 Sports, a 4-star on Composite. Other services are based in Nashville. So I'm not going to knock that. Okay, I'm not going to knock him because he's from Nashville. Although again, I think all ratings are a bit overinflated for those kids. It said he played in the private school system in Nashville. So when I see him outrunning defensive backs, Dave, for a touchdown like he does on his highlight reel, like Jason Witten did in Michigan, I'm like, come on.
It's hard to determine. No,
yeah,
I agree with you on that. Which commitment in 2026 is most likely to stick? Quarterback Faison Brandon or tight end Carson Sneed? There are individual reasons why both could look elsewhere. There's no need to look elsewhere when it comes to work trucks. All about trucks. Work trucks with an X, LLC.com. Trucks that are actually available. Trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work truck. Now, time is money. The perfect work truck doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. It's contracting. It's about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth. The Napod work bodies are installed. They've got the cranes, dump trucks. They're awesome. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. In Birmingham and on Clinton Highway in Knoxville, Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com, Work Trucks, LLC.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. Contractor, you have to know Work Trucks. I could make the argument that Faison Brandon could have other schools come at him and Merklinger or McIntyre could grab the starting job and he could decide to go elsewhere. That's just quarterback recruiting 101, right?
Yes.
Okay. Carson Sneed as a 3-star, if we want to call him a borderline player because he plays at a lower level, if we want to call him that, he could end up elsewhere if he doesn't continue to develop. Now, he's already got size at 6'5.5". He's 235, or I would wonder if he grows into an offensive tackle. But, Carson Sneed, if he doesn't develop, could be one of those guys that you trade up for when you get closer to signing day. Could be. So I ask you this question: who is more likely to end up of all, Faison Brandon or Carson Sneed?
I mean, again, not a guarantee, but I think it's obvious that you put more money on Carson Sneed because Faison Brandon is going to have to compete with George McIntyre. And the truth of the matter is, with quarterbacks, there's always only room for one quarterback, right? I mean, if you're a tight end and a coach tells you you're not the guaranteed starter, you can split time and split reps and be fine. You don't really, unless Steve Spurrier is coaching you and it's the 90s, you're not splitting reps with a quarterback.
No, and I read a quote from his coach that I thought was really insightful, and it said he's a dude. Now, sometimes that sounds like an insult. I had Caleb. He's a dude. But in football terms, it means you're a player. So that to me means he shows up on campus, is ready to play tight end pretty quickly. How effective he is, we'll see. He seems more like the blocking type of tight end that Tennessee likes to utilize with Jacob Warren. And then you see how he develops when he gets on campus. But I have no problem with him taking somebody like this as a 3-star this early in the process. But the thing that I like about him is I think he gives you immediate help on special teams and help at tight end because he is a dude, which in football terms is a good thing, Caleb.
Oh, yes, that's very true. It's a very good thing, football terms, to be a dude, like a baller, basically, a player. And I'll say that I'm going to say this up front. I don't think it's any coincidence. Even though I think Faison Brandon is less likely to stay than Carson Sneed, I don't think it's a coincidence now that he committed right after Faison Brandon. I think because of Faison Brandon,
it's definitely not.
He knew at that point, like he was always leaning probably Tennessee, but with Faison Brandon, he says, okay, they're not going to have a problem at quarterback no matter what happens in the future. I know that whoever's throwing the ball will be able to get me the ball. So I should go there now because I already wanted to.
Teddy says they ain't going anywhere. I look at a 2026, 2 years down the line. I think there's always that possibility. So I'm not trying to tell you that they're going anywhere. I don't think they are. As a matter of fact, I'd make the argument that Tennessee does end up with both of them because give me one major decommitment that has occurred under Josh Heupel's watch. Anybody? I'm opening that up to the message board as well. One major decommitment, like a Chris Leak, like that type of guy who says he's coming to your school and then decides not to. I think that speaks to culture. And you make fun of me a lot, Caleb, for saying culture too much. But I think a lot of that speaks to culture, the fact that they're willing to stick. I mean, Colorado's had decommitments. And I think that speaks to their culture or lack thereof that we talked about yesterday.
That is true. The biggest one I remember, and this was a significant one, was the Mazio Bennett decommitment. For those who don't remember, Mazio Bennett was a 4-star from South Carolina. I want to say committed right after Jaylen Hyatt, who is also from South Carolina, had that 5-touchdown game against Alabama. And then he flipped after South Carolina blew out Tennessee.
I don't know that he flipped publicly. I would have to go back and look that up, but I can tell you that he was.
Yeah, he was committed. And
I can tell you he was. Well, what I was going to tell you, he was privately committed at the very least. Now, so he apparently went public with it as well. Asia Cafe, treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family secrets. 5 locations to choose from. Just go right down below, asiacafe.org, asiacafe.org. Let's get to what the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
What the H brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design today. Tennessee number 15 in the coaches poll. That's about where they were in the preseason media poll for SEC Media Days. What do you make of Tennessee being 15? If I may go first, I love it. I think Tennessee is the one team that can truly make a run in the college football playoff in the nation that is being overlooked. And we're going to go through the whole list a little bit later. But I think they're the one team that is being overlooked. And I know that this is the coaches poll. And you've got a really good theory on the coaches poll. But I'll also say this. The coaches poll is not going to treat Josh Heupel as nicely as the media poll. One, the media poll is smarter. But two, coaches don't like getting a score run up on them. Do you think if Eli Drinkwitz has to fill out a poll and he has to put Tennessee on it, he has to choose between 15th or 25th, he's going to choose 15? No, he's going to put them as low as he can. So coaches are never going to like Josh Heupel.
Dave, how dare you say that media people are smarter than coaches? You've never played football. You've never coached football. What do you know about the game? That's what coaches would say because they're so snobbish. They think half of them don't know what they're coaching. I learned about some coaches not even knowing about the rules of coin tosses back in the day. So, anyways,
I covered a game one time in which the starting quarterback said that we will choose to kick. You choose to defer so that you have the choice in the second half. So that team kicked off both halves.
But Dave, you don't play football, so you don't know. The quarterback was on to something.
As the play-by-play guy, I didn't know what the hell was going on at the time. I didn't know why he was kicking it off. But Caleb, these coaches aren't voting Tennessee higher than not. They all talk. They all know that Josh Heupel ran it up on Missouri 2 years ago. They know he's a numbers guy. Old school coaches are not going to like that. They're about go out and get that victory 13-12 if that's what it takes.
Yeah, but old school coaches also would not politic, and they would just think of who the best teams are. Now, Nick Saban was the king of politicking when he had the coaches poll vote. Like when the coaches poll had a hand in the BCS, and Nick Saban voted Oklahoma State was competing with him number 5 instead of number 3. That's just a random aside. But to Tennessee's point, I think it's deeper. I think coaches genuinely think in a very lazy fashion that Josh Heupel's offense has been figured out. And I think that because here is the methodology. And this is some Mel Kiper NFL draft analysis. And I say Mel Kiper NFL draft because I think Mel Kiper gives lazy draft analysis. There, I said it. But
he's taught into George O'Mara, so when he got out of it, that was the issue. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, so here's the issue. The coaches saw Tennessee's offense ball in 2022. They then saw Joe Milton replace Hendon Hooker in the Orange Bowl and still ball, and then they're thinking, okay, it's about the offense. That's what was in their mind after the Orange Bowl, right? It's not about the quarterback, it's about the offense, right?
Right.
And then they saw 2023, and they saw the regression. So in their mind, they said, if it's about the offense and not the quarterback, it doesn't matter that Tennessee didn't have the proper quarterback to run the system. They missed 1,000 things with that. One, they missed the fact that in the Orange Bowl, Clemson just didn't get off the bus and didn't bother to show up for that game.
Which happens in bowl games all the time. It still blows me away that people get surprised by that. Go ahead.
It does me too. It's insane. It blows me away that NFL scouts and GMs actually draft based on bowl performances. So there was that part, but then there was the part that throughout last year, not only was Joe Milton not a fit for Josh Heupel's offense, but Tennessee suffered, like, of injuries you couldn't afford on offense, Tennessee suffered them. Cooper Mays, Brew McCoy for the season, then Dante Thornton for the season. Those were like and then Javonte Spraggins for the season. That's like a who's who of like players you don't want to lose for the year, say for maybe Dante Thornton, but the others might have been the 4 most important players on the offense. So Joe Milton already wasn't a fit, was playing with one hand tied behind his back. Tennessee still managed to go 9-4, by the way. And, I want to point out that Joe Milton, if this offense has been figured out, was still one of the most efficient passers in college football last year because of Heupel's system. And Tennessee finished number 17 last year. And you think now, with them fully healthy and having a quarterback that everybody believes is generational, they would only go up to number 15 in 2024? That's a lack of research.
Russ Tastic on the message board pointed out Tennessee is a contender this year. Lots of folks want to affirm it, but history says UT will flop. This ain't you, and it's not us. You're right, Russ. Let me ask you this question, though. Does the history hurt Tennessee in some of these preseason polls?
Yes, it's like horoscopes. And what I mean by that is humans.
Horoscopes? What now?
Humans subconsciously create patterns that aren't there. That's a human nature thing. So it's human nature to think Tennessee has struggled in the past. They're going to struggle this year. It just is a thing that exists. Okay. It's the same way people say following a legend doesn't work out in coaching. That's just not true. It's not borne out in fact. All right. Plenty of coaches have followed legends and have had success following legends. So I think that the issue is that humans create patterns, and coaches and media analysts will do it too. And they'll say Tennessee has flopped all the way dating back to 2005. We can say when they were number 3 and finished 5-6, the thought process has been Tennessee flops when they have expectations. A lot of the issues with that is what they never pay attention to.
But coaches should look at X's and O's and Jimmy's and Joe's.
Yeah, everybody creates those patterns. I think it's stupid that people create those patterns, but they do. I mean, people thought that Peyton Manning being in attendance was what was costing Tennessee football wins, not the fact that Tennessee just sucked. Okay.
Let me ask you this, because this may be where we differ. Let's say there's 100 voters in the coaches poll. How many actually sit down and fill out their ballot?
That's the other part of them being lazy that I'll let you dive into, Dave.
I'm going to say 5.
You think only 5? Oh, fill out their ballot?
Yes. I think, and there's not that many voters. I'm just using a round number for percentages. But I just, with all they've got going on, Can you imagine Josh Heupel saying, hold on there, Joey Halsley. I realize you have an awesome play that you want to share with me, but I've got to fill out my coach's poll. Hold on. I realize Faison Brandon is on the phone and wants to talk about his commitment, but I have to fill out my coach's poll.
I agree. Here's my question, Dave.
I mean, you and I are too busy to do a damn coach's poll every week.
I know. I would do the same thing. I would be like, oh, man, okay.
You'd be like,
Here's my
Jordan,
question.
Here you go. I'll be like, here you go.
Hey, Jordan, I know you need me to feed my son, but let me fill out this coach's poll. Here's the issue with it. I think it's less than 5 now, and I would say it was 5 back in the day. And Dave, give me your thoughts on this. I think it may have been 5 when the coaches poll had an impact on who played for the national title, because then the coaches realized they kind of had a responsibility, right? You had a responsibility to the sport to get the right teams in the title game. But,
yes. But only 8 were really,
that doesn't
really a factor.
But that's what I'm saying. That doesn't exist anymore, right? So what's the point of even wasting your time? The coaches poll has no impact on that. Now, I think personally the coaches poll, I take media polls seriously and coaches polls because I do think college football is a sport that media members should be proud of, dating back to the days of Grantland Rice, who we all know, Nashville legendary writer from the early 1900s who helped make the sport popular. It is a sport that really was made by media and by like rankings more than any other sport. So for tradition's sake, I hold it dear. And I think it does affect recruiting to a certain degree, but that's minuscule. I'm reaching though, right?
Adam's making me laugh a little bit. It doesn't take long to write down 25 teams on a piece of paper if you don't care. I mean, and if you have an agenda to say, Tennessee just beat the hell out of me in 2022, I'm going to knock them down a couple of slots. I mean, but yes, you literally could use the restroom and write down 25 teams on a piece of paper. I'm not arguing with that, but if you're going to do it right, and I know people that have been in the AP voting, and Caleb, I would highly encourage if anybody asks you to be in the AP voting that you politely decline, because you should spend a couple hours on a Sunday morning, because it should be volatile. It should be extremely volatile, but it's typically not. It's typically like a jump teams ahead of you.
Oh yeah. AV poll is very overreactionary or very reactionary, I guess. The evidence of what you're saying is, I don't know if you guys all know this. Dave knows this. It's common knowledge among older college football fans, but for our younger viewers, Steve Spurrier wrote in Duke as a top 25 team every single year he had a vote in the coaches poll. And his whole point was, they gave me my first job, I'm going to give them a vote. So like whenever he was one of the voters in the coaches poll, you would see Duke getting a vote for the top 25 every single year. Doesn't
that just end up getting silly though?
I think he was forced to stop, but yes.
Coming up on the program for Tennessee's offense, if you haven't checked out the website, we would highly encourage you to do that. Today's tough question brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. You can see right above my shoulder here the awesome offerings they have at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the fire opals? That's the Tennessee tradition. Go to rickterryjewelry.com, rickterryjewelry.com, and you can see the fantastic pendants that they have, the state of Tennessee. They've got the cufflinks with the power tee on them. rickterryjewelry.com. Please tell them that Off the Hook Sports sent you. As you support our sponsors, that is why we're here, and we greatly appreciate that. All right, so let's go to this coach's poll. I guess Georgia was number 1, huh?
Georgia was number 1.
Any arguments with Georgia being number 1?
I don't have any arguments. They still have the most talent, and they have, I mean, even though I think Nico Iamaleava is better, Georgia's scary because they have a loaded team talent-wise, and they have actually an elite quarterback, not a game manager.
Hey now. I can't put any other team but Georgia at number 1. I mean, that just wouldn't make any sense. All right, so number 2. Let's go to number 2 because it is Ohio State.
That's crazy.
I know you're not on the Ohio State bandwagon. Neither am I. I think there's big time pressure in Columbus with Chip Kelly being the offensive coordinator. I think it's a win now type of situation. I think that pressure ends up busting pipes. And the only reason that I don't have this as Ryan Day on the super hot seat is because Jim Harbaugh is gone from Michigan. Otherwise, I'd be chalking up another Michigan win and Ryan Day on the very, very hot seat. As things stand now, I think that the Buckeyes end up struggling because of pressure. So I would not have them this high.
This is the most overrated team in the coaches poll, far and away, guys. So the whole shebang on this, and this is again coaches being lazy. Ohio State added a transfer quarterback in Will Howard because the consistent thought process was last year they didn't have the right quarterback, right, with Kyle McCord. He just didn't fit the system. And everybody is thinking, oh, well, they got the right quarterback now, so they're going to be fine. Yeah, they also lost like half their offense to the NFL. They were loaded with first-round draft picks. Marvin Harrison Jr. is gone. I mean, so the weapons around the quarterback are nowhere near as good. So, yeah, they should be number 2, and they're going to implode because of the Chip Kelly thing. I'm with you.
All right, Oregon, number 3.
Hey now.
I'm good with Oregon at 3. You?
Yeah, I'm good with Oregon at 3. I think they actually should be the Big Ten favorites this year. I got them winning the Big Ten.
All right, Texas at number 4.
Overrated. I got overrated. I don't believe in Steve Sarkisian. You're with me on that?
I do. And I didn't think I would, but I do now. I'm fine with them being 4.
I think they're overrated. I think they have a very easy schedule. They coasted through the Big 12 last year, but I think they'll get hurt for having an easy schedule. So let's go to another SEC team.
Alabama, number 5.
I'm going to say they're right. They're right where they should be.
I agree because they still have some talent there from the Saban days, and DeBoer will surprise some people, and he's a good coach. I think you'll see them slide into being just a really good program instead of an elite, epic program, but that's not going to happen in year number 1. Number 6 is Ole Miss. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I think that's high, if not
That's crazy.
low.
I can't. I'm going to say overrated. I can't believe that's all.
Overrated?
I don't believe you can just string a bunch of talent together in a year without any chemistry.
It's either one of those things where they could be number 1 or number 25, right?
Yes, exactly. It's like the first round draft pick that like they could be a Hall of Famer, but they could be a massive flame out too.
No, I don't know how long that Ole Miss fans are comfortable with that. Is that something you would want to be a part of where you're up and down every year? It may not matter because we all think that eventually Lane Kiffin's going to be coach at another school. Portions of the program brought to you by Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. All work covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online at qualitytirepros.com. qualitytirepros.com. The remainder of the top 10 consist of Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State, Florida State. I'm not going to ask you if those teams are overrated or not. I'll ask you this. Are they true playoff contenders? By the way, Notre Dame just lost, and it wouldn't factor into this, one of their top offensive linemen to pectoral tear. That would seemingly hurt them. Michigan has a new coach. Penn State, I still don't like James Franklin. I know you don't like Florida State. I mean, after you get past 6, I have trouble seeing these guys being true contenders. Maybe contenders to make the playoffs, but not win the playoffs.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see any of these guys as contenders to win. Now, Michigan lost a ton of talent, but they do. And then there's the whole sign stealing thing and the scandal, which we're going to talk about again today for another reason. But they also do have a better they're apparently upgrading at quarterback, according to a lot of people. I just have a hard time seeing that because I think sometimes, and you can call me crazy, Dave, but I think sometimes game managers at quarterback are very underrated. There's a reason the Ravens didn't go back to the Super Bowl after they got rid of Trent Dilfer. Say whatever you want about Trent Dilfer, but I think if they had him in 2002, had they not released him, they'd have gone back to the Super Bowl that year too. And so he was better than Elvis Gerback. And so I mean, that's kind of where I am on this. I'm a little mixed. Florida State, here's the thing. Florida State's 10, Clemson's 14. I think they should flip. I actually think Clemson's better than Florida State this year, funny enough. And I think that's going to show. I do think, you could call me crazy, but Dave, I think only the ACC champion will get into the playoff. I don't think they're going to take a wild card from the ACC at all.
No. And I think partially that's orchestrated to use as leverage to break them up.
Probably. Now,
if there was an SEC team and an ACC team that you're choosing from, you're going to choose the SEC. They played nice.
I agree. Now, going down the list of top 25, I told you Ohio State's my most overrated. I want to get to my most underrated, but before, what's your most overrated team in the entire top 25? Who's the
Ohio
most
State. I hate to agree with you, but it would be Ohio State.
It's Ohio State. My most underrated, Tennessee notwithstanding, because I think they have a strong case to be underrated the most. But right there with them, Dave, I think Texas A&M is the most underrated at 20. I think there's great value on Texas A&M. I think we're forgetting, because of the Jimbo Fisher saga, just how much talent is on that team right now.
I wouldn't argue with that. But if you had to choose between Texas A&M and Tennessee, and I want to ask it in a very specific way, because I want your thoughts on the entire season. Who ends up better than their preseason ranking by the greatest amount? In other words, Tennessee at 15. If they finish at 5, that would be a +5. Texas A&M at 20. It'd be, if they finished at 17, that'd be a +3. So who do you think finishes the highest based off their preseason prognostication?
Well, what if I say Tennessee is going to finish number 1 and Texas A&M is going to finish number 2? Texas A&M would make the larger leap at that point. I've given you guys my thoughts on Tennessee. I don't want to out and out say it, but I'm as high as you could possibly be on them. You take with it what you may when I say I'm as high as you could possibly be on them. But I actually think Texas A&M is going to make a larger jump than it's even possible for Tennessee to make, because I think Texas A&M is going to finish in the top 5. I think they'll be number 4 or 3 this year. My theory, yes, my theory is you got an Ivy League coach who knows football, coaching talent. For the first time ever, like an SEC school, not an SEC school, a college football program thought, like, let me go like nerdy smarts for my head coach. The coach of the Dolphins, Dave, you know what I'm talking about, right? That nerdy looking dude with the glasses.
Mike McDaniel.
Yes. Look at how much ahead of the curve he is in everybody else coaching offense right now, because like he's not just a guy who played ball who stumbled up the ladder. He's actually an analytical smart guy.
No, and I think you'll see that, but you still have to have the toughness aspect of it. It can't be all a video game, right? You have to have, if Josh Heupel, but he played. Let's take Lane Kiffin, for instance. Lane Kiffin played football, but he wasn't a superstar by any stretch of the imagination and wasn't as good as Josh Heupel. But Lane Kiffin surrounded himself with tough guys, so he was able to take the intellectual approach, which I'll give Philip Fulmer credit. He was a little bit of both, wasn't he?
He was. I think Mike Elko's that. Look at Mike Elko. He looks like a ball guy. He looks like a tough guy who was tough when he played Ivy League football. I'll give you another example on this that worked out before things went way south at the end, and he was a horrible human being and a terrible person, and he can, he had to meet his maker for what he did. However, there was no denying that Joe Paterno was smart, right? When he, in his prime, in his heyday, at his peak, he was a really smart coach. He also was a tough coach, right? Penn State was one of the tougher programs during that time. So Mike Elko, I think, is almost like a modern day Joe Paterno on his coaching style, not his character.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I would assume you would think that. That'd be interesting to see. That's a very intriguing comparison. Portions of the program brought to you by our good friends at, of course, it is Neubert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Interesting comment from Derek on the message board. By the way, we're live at 10 a.m. each and every day on YouTube if you want to take part in the program live. Derek says OSU with Chip's offense and recruiting ability out west with the Pac-12 teams joining, y'all may want to pump your brakes. Chip may destroy these traditional Big Ten teams. They don't score, and he does. Derek, that's what they're hoping for, but I don't think Chip Kelly's offense is all that in vogue anymore. I think that's more along the lines of a Heupel or even a Kiffin. I think Chip Kelly's offense is not been figured out. I still think it's competent. I mean, the I formation's been figured out and how to stop it. It's whether or not you can do it. I mean, I think it's good, but I don't see him as an offensive visionary like he was 10, 15 years ago.
Chip Kelly's the tech bro of college football.
The what?
And he's the tech bro of college football.
What does that mean?
Okay, so here's what tech bros do. And these are during the tech boom in the 2010s, a lot of people came up with a very creative idea for an app. They got filthy stinking rich off it because they had this one good idea. And they think because they have this one good idea that they will be successful at everything they do and that they're smarter than everybody else at everything. Chip Kelly conceived an offense that was very ahead of the curve, right? And no one had figured out. And He dominated with it. He thinks because he conceived of an offense one time in 2007, when he was Dennis Dixon's offensive coordinator, that this will last, that automatically makes him the smartest coach to ever walk the face of the earth. That's why he's the tech bro of college football, because tech bros consistently think because they came up with one good idea that they are qualified to speak on every aspect of human life, and that makes them smarter than everybody.
Well, it worked for Mark Cuban.
It did. And Mark Cuban is kind of a tech bro. He's an early tech bro. He's in the Bill Gates era.
He invented streaming. So that Indiana basketball could be heard everywhere.
It's gone from Mark Cuban to Jeff Bezos to Elon Musk. They're all the same. All the tech bros are the same. I don't care how you feel about them politically or anything like this. They have one idea, and it gets them rich. To their credit, they're smarter than oil executives. Oil executives don't even have an idea. They just go drill in Texas and see if they can strike a rig, and then they get filthy, stinking rich, and then they think they're smarter than everybody else. Jerry Jones, they're smarter than trust fund babies who were children of oil daddies who they're really incompetent. Jimmy has them. But tech bros, yes, they at least have an idea. And it's a valuable idea, and they get filthy, stinking rich off it.
Who on the message board learns new terms from Caleb? I do. Tech bro. I didn't know that one.
Yeah, tech bro. Right.
I tell you what, if you need a promo bro, your bro is Tyler. Check out my shirt, my Off the Hook Sports embroidered shirt. It looks awesome. I'm going to get you one as well, Caleb. And it'll be by Apex Apparel, not just clothes, design, brand, and market. That's Apex Apparel. Call Tyler at 865-919-3001, 3001, and you get 15% off your first order. Trust me, you'll absolutely love it. Tennessee, I have chosen an X factor on their offense, and it's not Nico, and it's not Coop, but here we go.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The X factor for this offense is Andre Keurig. We'll do the X factor defensively tomorrow. That could be a bunch of names. But if Andre Keurig goes from average to good, which he was average last year, as a transfer, he should have been better. If he takes to the offseason and he's better, then it makes Tennessee a lot deeper. You don't have to push Jackson Lampley or Shamarad Umarov into duty, and you have a position that is better than last year. The X factor is Andre Keurig, and I call him the X factor because I'm not even 100% sure he's going to start, Caleb.
I'm having a hard time arguing with you on the X factor because I think Andre Keurig, if he's good, that totally changes the complexion of Tennessee. I'm going to go a little bit different, though, and I'm going to throw two other names at you, and you tell me if I'm crazy. One, there's no X factors at receiver, right? Because they're so loaded at receiver that they have options, right?
Yes. I mean, if there's an X factor, it's Mike Matthews because he suddenly explodes onto the scene, but you kind of think that'll happen anyway, so.
Yes. We know about Nico Iamaleava. I mean, he's the most important player, guys. We don't have to be like, he's the X factor. We get it with Nico. The X factor is a guy who we don't know what he's going to turn out to be like. He's the
has upside.
But has upside. He's the Horace Grant of the crew, right? With the Bulls. Whereas we knew what Michael and Scotty brought.
That's a good comparison. I mean, this guy's had two big-time schools offer him a scholarship. So apparently he's played good football on film somewhere. We just haven't seen it here.
Exactly. So I can't argue with Andre Keurig, but I'm going to go two other names. One, no, maybe it's not X factor because maybe they already expect him to be good, but Lance Hurd at left tackle. There are questions on whether or not he'll pick up the offense quickly, right?
Yes, I think that is a very fair X factor question. And I think that sometimes we have been guilty of just saying he's going to step in and be a star, but we did the same thing with Andre Keurig last year. And what happened with that?
Yeah, that became a big issue. I mean, Andre Keurig completely collapsed. I wouldn't say collapsed, but he was an issue. What about this? And here's another one, and it's not on the offensive line, interestingly enough. And guys, we're just talking about the X factor on offense. I guess we should have been clear about that, right?
Yes, we'll do defense tomorrow. What
about what I've been saying for a long time, Peyton Lewis? Because I keep maintaining I don't think Tennessee has a feature back. And and when I say feature back, the feature back doesn't have to be elite. The feature back has to be serviceable. I don't think any of their other running backs are serviceable enough to be feature backs. Dylan Sampson can't pass, bro. Cam Seldon has terrible vision. Khalifa Keith is too slow.
I think it's one of those two. I think it's Lewis or Keurig. I don't think there's anybody else that even is in that ballpark.
So you don't think Lance Hurd's in the ballpark?
I think Lance Hurd's a tier down from those two. I mean, those two would be my big time questions. I think Lance Hurd is going to be good enough from all I've heard that I don't have as much of a question about him. But listen, all these guys are to some extent X factors. I mean, we think Nico's going to be really good, but we don't know that. Other potential X factors, I remind you that we are absolutely loving Banks and Jones. Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, play to win. Other lawyers say they'll go to trial. They won't. Banks and Jones. What other X factors are out there? We discussed with Caleb Calhoun. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. if you had to put Josh Heupel on the stand with T. Scott Jones, and he asked this question, and he has to be honest, who do you have more faith in, running back Peyton Lewis or offensive guard Andre Kurig to take a step this year? Who would it be?
I think it actually would be on Peyton Lewis. I think Josh Heupel wants Peyton Lewis to work out really badly.
That's not good. I mean, you would rather the offensive guard that's been in the system be a factor than a freshman, Caleb.
I agree, but I think he's more hope with Andre Kurig. I just don't think he has I don't think he's that confident. I think he's just hopeful at this point. I think he was very disappointed with Kurig's play last year. Now, okay, let me be fair to Andre Kurig. This offense is different. It's so tempo-based. You may not pick it up in a year. But if that's the case, then Lance Hurd's a concern, isn't he?
Yeah, just being in shape, I think, is the greatest challenge. I mean, you can't simulate that. I talked to Cooper Mays about that, and he said the week after he came back from the abdominal surgery, yeah, there's just no way to simulate that. And you're going to try to simulate it as best you can, but Lance Hurd hasn't done a lot of work in the offseason, and that's on him, then he's not going to be conditionally ready. But if Andre Kurig wasn't ready from a conditioning standpoint, in most every offense, I would say that's the young man's fault. In this particular case, I'll give a pass for a year because of the tempo of it. And I think that's tough to simulate. Let's not forget, when all that adrenaline gets pumping in a game, there's a lot of energy that you will expend that you don't in practice. But as far as the X factors, I think it's Kurig and Lewis. And if it's not Lewis, then I guess it would have to be Cam Seldon at some point in the season, right?
Yes. So we both agree. We both are writing off Sampson. He can't be a feature back, right?
Well, I'm not completely there yet because I think this offense can change and become even more horizontal than it is with him.
Yeah, it's the thing with Sampson is he's Alvin Kamara without the pass pro. That's kind of my issue with Sampson. It's like, because people keep comparing him to Alvin Kamara, but Alvin Kamara had about 20 more pounds on Sampson and was as athletic. And so I think that's kind of the problem.
Yeah, was Alvin Kamara a great pass protector though?
He was good enough. And in that offense, you needed it to be because the release by Josh Dobbs didn't have the quickest release. That was not his forte. So he had to be able to pick up pass pro. It was one of the reasons, maybe you could tell me I'm crazy, but it was one of the reasons I sometimes defended starting Jaylen Hurd over Alvin Kamara. I don't think it's just because Butch Jones made promises to Jaylen Hurd. I think there was some physical things Jaylen Hurd could do that Alvin Kamara couldn't. And honestly, Jaylen Hurd, as the workhorse back, allowed Kamara to be such an elite, flashy back.
Interesting. Okay, let's go to stat of the day. How about that? By the way, Jacob Warren is in Patriots camp, but he wanted to share something with you.
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
Well played.
Thank you. This day in Tennessee history brought to you by Don Self at State Farm. Customer service still matters. For 40 years, they built their business on taking care of their customers. The greater Chattanooga area, call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126, or go to donself.net, donself.net. This day in Tennessee sports history is
a very, very, very happy birthday to one of the early great legends in Tennessee basketball history, not Bernard King and Ernie Grunfeld, but Dale Ellis, who turns 64 years old today. Dale Ellis played for Tennessee from 1980 to 1983 and became a great NBA player, was an all-star in 89. And I can tell you this, if college basketball had the three-point line when he was at Tennessee and they had transitioned him to a three-point shooter, he'd have been the most ahead-of-the-curve college basketball player ever, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would have. I think he was incredibly ahead of the curve himself personally by saying, I'm going to turn myself into a three-point shooter, because he was a post player big time at Tennessee. And I mean, can you think of anybody else that has so completely changed their game? I mean, that's the equivalent of going from a Mike Vick to a Peyton Manning. I mean, he completely changed his game. And if you didn't watch him back when he played at Tennessee, you would think that he was a three-point specialist or an outside shooting specialist in college, but he clearly wasn't. Where does he rank among Tennessee's top players? Top 10?
From a talent perspective, man, he's top 5. The only reason it's hard because it's like,
okay, let's
Dale
do it.
Ellis.
I got Bernard King. I got Dalton Connect. Who else?
Tennessee is wing U. It's small forward U. Bernard King, Dalton Connect, Dale Ellis. Those are, I think, the top 3, honestly. I think Allen Houston. We got to put Allen Houston in there. And again, guys, this is just raw talent. This is just talent. This is not like what your all-time starting 5 would be. But those 4, and then probably Grant Williams, I'd say. Those 5. Now, the would have been, if and other guys on the list, I mean, we love them. I mean, I think Ron Slay was the unfortunate victim of a mentality by NBA GMs during that time that 6'7" power forwards aren't a thing. Because Ron Slay could have been a very good 6'7" power forward in the NBA. They just didn't value that in the early 2000s. And then obviously there's the Chris Loftons and people like that. I think Chris Lofton is a top 5 player in Tennessee history in terms of his production, but I don't think he's a top 5 talent. Do you? I think that's why what Chris Lofton did was so impressive, was that he really overachieved.
Yeah, it was one of those guys that you watched in college. You're like, I don't know what he's going to be in the professional level, but he is a great college player. We talked about Andre Currig. If he can make the step and improve his play from last year, how good can Tennessee's offensive line be? Because you're talking about Cooper Mays, who's preseason All-SEC at center, and then a pretty good offensive line around him. We mentioned Hurd on the right side. You got Spraggins, and you'll have John Campbell Jr. Where does this offensive line rank if Currig makes the step?
If Currig makes the step, and if Lance Hurd picks up the offense, and if there are no injuries, guys, Tennessee could have the best offensive line in the SEC. I mean, they could have the absolute best offensive line in the SEC.
Now, that's saying an awful lot, okay? Because, I mean, LSU has a great offensive line this year. Texas has a great offensive line. Georgia and Alabama. As a matter of fact, if you go to 247 Sports, it ranks Tennessee's offensive line at number 5. I would argue that what you said is exactly right. If Currig makes that big step, or somebody does at left guard, I could see them competing as one of the top offensive lines in the SEC and possibly the country. But they've got to stay healthy, right?
They got to stay healthy. Those are 3 tall asks, by the way. I mean, all of these are 50-50 propositions, right? Carrig picking it up, Carrig taking a step, Lance Hurd figuring it out, and everybody staying healthy. Every one of those is 50-50. Guys, I'm a gambler. A 3-legged 50-50 parlay is a terrible bet. Okay, so I mean, that's not what usually happens. You usually may hit on 2 of them. You're as likely to hit on 1 as you are 2. So,
but what's the other parlay? We just got 2 parlays going. Is this a bad 2 parlay bet?
No, it's a 3-leg parlay. It's a 3-leg parlay. Carrick take the step. Lance Hurd pick up the offense in one offseason, and no injuries. That's a 3-legged parlay.
On our poll question, if you want to take part, who do you have more faith in to take a step this season? Peyton Lewis, a freshman, gets 62% of the vote. Andre Currig gets 38% of the vote. Caleb, I love you, buddy, but it is just absolutely got to be Currig. I mean, to ask Peyton Lewis to step in as a freshman and be your go-to tailback, your featured tailback, I 25 years in this business tells me that's not going to happen.
The unknown is always sexier. Okay. I always bring up, Dave, you were married for what, 20 or how many years you been married now?
Long time.
Yeah. I'm not plus. I'm my 9-year anniversary is Thursday.
Congratulations.
I will say, like, as we all know, the new girl always on the surface can seem more attractive because you don't know what you don't know about her. You don't know what's bad about her. You know all the negatives of your wife.
No, she's got cooties.
Or she may have something else, the adult version of cooties, which is the scary thing. But that's why Peyton Lewis, people are picking Peyton Lewis. I'll admit it, maybe it's why I'm picking Peyton Lewis. The unknown of Peyton Lewis, you don't know the negatives where you know the negatives about Carrick. But I will say this, like if Carrick and Hurd figure things out and there are no injuries, I mean, Dave, we're already talking about a generational quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. What can this offense... Could they have a game where they score a touchdown on every possession?
Yeah, they could do that against Chattanooga if they wanted to.
You're probably right.
I don't think they're going to.
I mean, I say that they let South Carolina score on every possession against them in 2022, but still, I'm wondering, could they have a game where they score on every possession? Because it's hard for me to see this offense not. Guys, I don't know how this offense doesn't shatter every record in Tennessee history this year, like every single one.
I think they do. They won't shatter your pocketbook if you get your Medicare advice from Medicare Misty. So I'm going to put the over-under at 650 yards for Peyton Lewis. What rushing yards, not all purpose. What will Caleb say after I tell you about Medicare Misty?
19 years this year. Well, I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
I want to remind you that Misty is services in over 40 states. So support our sponsors. That's why we're here, not just Tennessee. Caleb, 650 yards. Peyton Lewis gets more or less?
Easily more. And I can just give you the numbers on this to prove to you why it's easily more. And which is in 2022, Jabari Small and Jaylen Wright both had over 650 yards. In 2023, Jaylen Wright had 1,000. Dylan Sampson is the clear backup, had over 600. So I think even if Dylan Sampson this year gets 1,000, Peyton Lewis is getting 650 yards. I think it's an easy bet he gets over 650.
So if you were to predict Dylan Sampson gets 1,000?
I think Dylan Sampson gets 1,000 all-purpose yards.
But you're not going to rush you. I see what you did to me there.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe I'll include kickoff return yards in that stat.
Makes it very easy. With Tennessee and they're players that have to make a jump. And when you look at Peyton Lewis, obviously these two things are tied together with Andre Carrick. I think that the Peyton Lewis and this offensive line being elite, however, depends on one guy that is very dependable, and it's Cooper Mays. And you go in there with an incredible weapon. And I mean weapon as an offensive lineman. He can move people. I think he is slightly undersized, which is good because he has leverage against people. And I think that's a pretty good start. We talk about left tackle a lot, Caleb. And that's, I think I saw your book, or at least I have. Or no, the quarterback. You've got it on your back thing. I think the first chapter there talks about how important it is to protect the quarterback's blind side. Or maybe I'm mixing that up with another book. Nevertheless, in this offense, is center as important as left tackle, which is typically considered the most important position on the offensive line.
Oh, center's the most important position on this offensive line. And I used to hate when people said that. You knew you knew you were in trouble with the coach when the coach was like, well, the center touches the ball every play, so he's the most important offensive lineman. And I'm like, okay, well, this coach
usually he used to be the least athletic. Now he's traditionally the smartest, best technician, and plenty athletic.
Yes, exactly. And this actually, I will give you this. The center became more important because of and you talked about this last week, what is why you have Peyton over Nico, or Peyton and Cutcliffe over Nico and Josh Heupel. The freeze plays, that makes the center the most important position on the line if you rely on those, right? Yes. The center has to make the right calls. And those freeze plays, which Tennessee does, Cooper Mays is crucial for that. Cooper Mays is the best center in college football. I actually think he's far and away the best center in college football. I think Javonte Spraggins, when fully healthy, Dave, is a first-team All-SEC right guard.
me ask you this, because Derek brought it up. Great point. He says best run offensive line. I can believe that, but pass offensive line, nope. So I'll ask you what they'll be better in. Brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. Caleb, so your thoughts?
They'll be better on the run blocking because of the interior. Cooper Mays and Javonte Spraggins. Can we both agree those are the two best linemen on this team by far?
Yes.
And they're reliable. They are incredible. Everything else is hope. However, here's the good news. It's more important for this Tennessee team to be better at run blocking, because if they're good at run blocking and if they can move the ball in Heupel's offense, guys, when the pass plays are there, the receivers open very, very, very fast. You don't really have to wait for him to get open, right?
No.
No,
I agree with that. I think Josh Heupel's offense can work around poor pass protection. I don't think they can work around guys that can't run in the interior, which when he was hired, you would have probably said the exact opposite, thinking he's just a throw it around the park type of coach, but that hasn't been the case. Give me 2 minutes and then the stat of the day. You want to tease the stat of the day coming up?
It has to do with running the football.
With running the football, and also who's the biggest cheater? Is it Kentucky or Michigan? Both.
Cab 4x4 STX 45,985. 24 Ford Escape 30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT 32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Brought to you in part by our good friends at Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best in sports memorabilia, daily updates. Just go to Facebook and follow on Sports Treasures TN. That's Sports Treasures TN. And you can click on that QR code that will take you right there. And I also want to remind you that in partnership with Sports Treasures, we got something pretty cool going on, and that is your opportunity to win some really big-time prizes. As a matter of fact, we just gave away a John Henderson, that's over my shoulder, autographed football, mini helmet, a mini helmet that's autographed. We'll be sending that out to Michael. Congratulations to him. And also our Grade 8 Challenge, brought to you by Rick Terry. Rick Terry's Grade 8 Challenge. Great. It is fantastic. Brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Rick Terry Jewelry Design will provide a Garmin watch worth $1,000 given away to one lucky listeners. You must be subscribed to Hooker's Corner, but you can be a free member, and you must be subscribed to our YouTube page. And we will have that drawing when we hit 8,000 subscribers. And at this rate, that is not going to take long. It is time for Downs, as we're going to talk about cheaters.
Well, do we want to do stat of the day first?
Do you want to do stat of the day first? Yeah, because we teased that. Let's do stat of the day first. Sorry.
Because I gotta show one of my guys some love. Okay. And I know people hated him with some of the stuff he said when he went to Alabama, but just know that it wasn't his fault. He was caught with he was caught in 2 bad coaching staffs with Jeremy Pruitt and Derek Dooley. I can't blame assistants for things that have been done that they did and things they got caught up in when you're stuck with those 2 staffs. Now, I'm sending a shout out to Jay Graham. That's who I'm sending a shout out to. And Jay Graham in 1990, it's 8/6, August the 6th, the number 14. That's special because in 1995, Jay Graham became the first running back in Tennessee history to rush for over 1,400 yards. 1,438 to be exact.
If you had that on your numerology bingo card, congratulations, because I did not. I thought you were going to say he scored 14 touchdowns in a game or something.
No. And as you know, Dave, the most famous play he had was, it's funny because the 2001 and 95 seasons are very parallel to me because the other running back to go for over 1,400 yards was the one who broke his record in Travis Stevens in 2001. They both have signature plays against rivals that were legendary wins in Tennessee history. 95 Tennessee at Alabama. You remember it, right? Tennessee's up 28-14. Everybody thinks Alabama's coming back. They just scored a touchdown to cut it to 2 scores, and Jay Graham delivers the crippling blow with a 79-yard touchdown run. In 2001 against Florida, Florida's cut the lead to 27-26. Everybody thinks Tennessee is going to fold in this one like they always do in the Swamp. And then Travis Stevens runs 68 yards and bowls over Gus Scott, a future NFL safety.
There you go. The guy has a great memory. We want to get to 4 downs now, and we're going to discuss cheaters because we don't cheat, but a lot of people in college football do. 4 downs is right now.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
By the way, I think we might be trending on this. Jim Harbaugh is denying the Michigan sign-stealing scandal. What we want to talk about today is who are the worst cheaters. That'll ultimately be the 4th question. That'll be 4th down. That's why we call it 4 downs. But let's get to 1st down right now, because you may have not even heard the Kentucky news dump that happened on Friday.
Coop here. 1st down.
Thank you, Coop. What did Kentucky do? What NCAA violations did they commit?
Basically, they self-reported violations in 2022, where they reportedly had a series of players in 2021 and 2022 who, in the era of NIL, were paid to do work that they didn't do.
Okay, which this is happening everywhere.
It's happening everywhere. Yes, it's absolutely happening everywhere. But this one's a little bit worse because it was work assignments at the university's hospital. So, you're dealing with healthcare and things like that. And
But what were they supposed to do? Just show up and cheer up the kids?
Probably something like that. But yes, it was 11 players received impermissible benefits for work that they didn't do between spring of 2021 and March of 2022.
Okay. Remind us.
Cooper Mays here. 2nd down.
What Michigan did.
Michigan, allegedly, because, Connor Stallion's a low-level employee who maybe was making $30,000 was obviously doing this on his own, guys, without any help from the upper management at Michigan whatsoever. Sure. But allegedly, the Michigan Wolverines put Connor Stalions up to go to football games and videotape opposing team signs to steal it, and not only use this for Michigan purposes, but to sabotage and give that information to other teams that were facing those teams that could be a threat to them in the college football playoff.
Which is frowned upon. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Who should be more scared, Michigan or Kentucky?
This is actually really funny because whether or not you think it's right, Kentucky should be more scared because Kentucky did just vacate their wins. Only because the NCAA's investigation and enforcement team is so bad that Kentucky's self-reporting gets them more caught than Michigan. The NCAA investigation team, if they were running murder cases, there'd be OJs walking free every day.
I think that Michigan is in more trouble because Jim Harbaugh is gone. Because I think it would be harder to come down on him. And I think he sent a clear signal that things are awry in Ann Arbor. And that's why he wanted to get out of there. He was wanted to get out of there for like 3 years, Caleb. So the fact that he wanted to get out of there, finally did, tells me that he thinks things could go south. A lot like the way Pete Carroll left Southern California.
Yeah. And wasn't Pete Carroll rejecting job offer after job offer? And then out of the blue, hey, I'll take one with the Seahawks.
Yes.
Yeah, no, and he bolted. That was actually that's a really funny comparison. I believe that, but I also believe that the NCAA now has even less power, and I don't think the NCAA wants to be in the business of probations anymore and postseason bans.
Well,
now they may be in the business of show calls.
Well, let me get to that.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Does the NCAA have any power anymore?
No. Paul Feinbaum was on First Take yesterday and basically said nobody should worry. The NCAA is not going to come down on you. It doesn't matter what they have you doing. They can't do anything. The conferences are going to have to enforce this now. And let's be honest, the Big Ten's not going to enforce anything against one of their biggest cash cows in Michigan.
So does the SEC ever step up?
The SEC is a little bit different because of the Albert Means Logan Young thing. And I don't know if you guys know. And the reason that's so significant, Dave, you were there, you were covering it. That was a watershed moment for sanctions in college football, right? And in major programs. Greg Sankey was hired specifically to deal with compliance after that. Because, guys, it didn't just put Alabama on probation. It put Kentucky on probation, too. And it was a really serious problem. Major black eye for the league.
Mike Slive deserves a lot of credit for helping clean up the league, too.
He does. He absolutely does. It was that was just a watershed moment. But Alabama and Auburn both were getting in a lot of trouble in the 90s with ineligible players. I mean, go back and look at it, guys. They kept getting on probation. Like, it was one or the other. And Florida, up until Spurrier, always got on probation. Florida has about 5 SEC titles they should have had, but they were on probation those years, so they don't actually have them. So that was a big issue, and that was the final straw. They called Greg Sankey to clean up the league. The last real issue was Mississippi State with Jackie Sherrill. And then Mississippi State hired Sylvester Croom, got a 1-year bowl ban, and a year they weren't going to a bowl anyway, so they didn't care. But yes, the SEC has put a real emphasis on compliance ever since then. The Big Ten, here's the issue with the Big Ten, and they're kind of caught in a rock and a hard place. They were when the SEC started focusing on compliance, I will say, Dave, they called up to the Big Ten, which had been better on compliance traditionally. They had. I'll be fair to them on that. Here's the problem. The Big Ten, since the 2010s, has been caught in way worse scandals, and I mean crimes against humanity scandals, between Penn State, Michigan State, Rutgers. You're not looking at paying a player under the table anymore. You're looking at severe, severe crimes. And if the Big Ten were to step up, it would be only because this is another crime, not a crime against humanity, but another one that doesn't just involve ineligible pay for play. It involves doing something beyond. And at some point, I think the Big Ten is going to say, we can't have this anymore.
Somebody has to police something, right? Or do they?
Yes.
What is being policed now? I mean, you mentioned crimes against humanity. If the NCAA had any stones whatsoever, that would be what they're trying to fight against, because paying players is not a thing anymore. Transferring is not a thing anymore. They can't do anything with tampering. There's no way that you can run down everybody's phone records to see if they tampered with another player in a transfer. I mean, what are they left to enforce? What's enforceable? I mean,
nothing.
You can come to campus anytime you want to. It's not like there was the no contact. I mean, there are some no contact periods that you have to follow, but I mean, what is to enforce? What's the crime?
There is nothing that they can enforce at this point. And here's the thing. Crimes against humanity, I don't look at those as a failure of the NCAA. I look at it as a failure of the legal system. I cannot believe Pennsylvania had a law didn't have a law requiring you to report child sex abuse to law enforcement. How is that not a law? Like, like, I don't know about Tennessee but like, I know where I live. Like, if I witness child sex abuse and I don't report it, I face charges myself. Like, that's a big deal. You're required to report it.
I totally agree. And I just, if you can pay players, if you can transfer easily, let's take it outside of, for a second, of the crimes against humanity, as you called it, which it was. Just in terms of football, what can they enforce?
They can't enforce anything. That's why Charlie Baker, by the way, fully backed Michigan last year the whole time. He knew that they couldn't enforce. That's the NCAA president, for those who don't know. He knew they couldn't enforce anything. Here's what the NCAA is in the process of doing. They are in the process of streamlining NIL to try to create a national standard. You're not going to get, but again, the elephant in the room with that is Title IX and the antitrust laws. They are in conflict with each other. Both of them are in constant conflict. So the minute they get streamlined, you're violating one of those laws, and you don't know which one. So I don't know what they can do. I do think this whole, again, you're right. The weird part about Kentucky vacating the wins, I'll say this. Is this even illegal anymore? Like, the fact that Tennessee took out the NCAA with its NIL lawsuit, how is the NCAA even allowed to make you vacate wins for doing something in the NIL age that you didn't really do? Like, for getting paid for something you didn't really get paid for.
Did they just agree to do it themselves? Did they just...
That's what it sounds like. Kentucky just agreed to do it themselves. Like, fine, we'll take away the wins.
That shows you how much they care about football. If that was basketball, they wouldn't take away those wins. They wouldn't vacate a national championship.
No, they wouldn't. And we're talking one of their best seasons ever, 2021. They went 10-3 that year. That's like, Kentucky doesn't go 10-3, guys. So they vacated like one of their banner years in football. But here's my hot take. I actually think that's worse than the Michigan scandal, because I don't think the Michigan scandal, and I'm going to say this, and it's
Caleb.
Hold on, let me finish. Every other league, you can videotape your opponents at games and steal their signs. It's only not allowed in college football. If someone steals your signs, they still have to execute the plays, and you should be smart enough to recognize when they get hold of your signs. I still to this day blame. I think they gave the information to South Carolina. I blame Josh Heupel for not adjusting.
Well, adjusting during the game with sign stealing is pretty darn difficult. I mean, you can do it, but
switch all of your signs. You should have a second level of signs that you switch all up.
Yeah, I think you should be able to make a switch at halftime. I agree with you, but when do you realize your signs are being stolen, or do you just think that they're guessing right? I mean, that's the issue with it. It's like the old, when you play video games and your eyes would creep over and Tecmo Bowl to the opponents and see.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's always the problem with video games. You can see the playbook they pull up when you're on the same screen. My issue with that, Dave, is that Michigan sign stealing was so blatant. That's how they got caught in the first place, because a bunch of teams were like, how did they know what we were doing?
Caleb, Michigan's way worse. I mean, come on. Let's think about this for a second. That's a conspiracy. Connor Stallions didn't do all that by himself. I mean, somebody else helped him, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went as high as a recruiting coordinator or they call them player personnel guys, so they don't take up a coaching space anymore. That would be pretty high up. I know Jim Harbaugh is not dumb enough to do something like that, but somebody else could.
No, but Jim Harbaugh was facilitating it.
You think he was facilitating it?
Yes. Sharon Moore, his offensive coordinator, deleted 52 text messages to Connor Stallions.
Okay, well then Michigan should have the hammer dropped down on them.
Why? They don't have any evidence.
Well, they have the deleted text messages that you
by definition of being deleted, there's no evidence. They don't have the text messages.
Okay. I watch way too many crime dramas, but do you know if he has an Apple or an Android?
Yes, but crime dramas.
Because Android, you can go back and find deleted items.
Well,
you can't on iPhone.
But here's the thing: crime dramas have federal investigators
I
and local
know,
investigators. They all have more power than the NCAA. Here's my thing, Dave. We're talking about Michigan doing something that I don't think should be a violation. Like, again, in the NFL, in the Super Bowl, for those who don't know, the reason the Broncos got waxed by the Seahawks in that Super Bowl where Peyton Manning had the greatest offensive year ever and then lost 43-8, we all remember that. It's because Richard Sherman just came out and said it. He said, yeah, no, we stole Peyton Manning's signs. We figured them all out. We videotaped them. We figured it all out. We stole them and we used them. And he said, had Peyton Manning switched them up at halftime, he'd have come back and beat us because we were all in on the signs we knew we had. Nobody thought that was cheating. Everybody thought that, oh, impressive. You guys did your due diligence to figure out Peyton Manning signs. And I'm thinking, shouldn't the same be applied here? Like, don't you respect Michigan for doing their due diligence?
There's not a lot I respect about Michigan right now. City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you that you need a new unit. Could just be Freon, could be a part. It doesn't have to cost thousands or more. Let's take a look at Tennessee picked up an in-state commitment. It's always news and it always makes me want to look forward to what may be in the state. So the 2026 class, to me, is a little bit down. When I look at the 2026 class, Jared Curtis obviously is a significant pickup for Tennessee out of Christian school. Then you start to look at the others.
You mean Carson Sneed. Carson
Oh,
Sneed.
what did I?
You said Jared Curtis.
Oh, sorry. With Carson Sneed, but you have other guys in the Midstate area. You have other guys in the state of Tennessee. Caleb, I think wide receivers may have trouble finding a place at Tennessee because of what they've done lately. Joe Wyatt is one to watch at 6'4", 192 pounds. He's a 4-star prospect. Georgia, Auburn, LSU, and Kentucky have shown strong interest. I would keep an eye on Joe Wyatt. My question is, does Joe Wyatt say to himself, they have too many receivers, I can't play?
I don't think so, because I think Tennessee is going to be loaded at receiver, but I think a lot of receivers will be leaving early for the NFL consistently. So I think that, and this is the truth, I think that Tennessee, you're going to see a lot of like 2-year and gone Tennessee receivers because they'll redshirt a year, start for 2 years, and then be gone to the NFL because I think they're going to be so productive that they're going to go.
Well, we're talking about 2026 guys. So if that plays out to be the case, then.
And Wyatt, I think, just looking at Wyatt real quick, I mean, we're talking about, the guy is 6'4", 192, and he just finished his sophomore year. So,
he could grow into a tight end.
He could grow into a tight end, or he could grow into a freakishly elite receiver. And, guys, he's from Bell Buckle, Tennessee. Don't you want a guy from Bell Buckle, Tennessee on your team?
All day long. Caden Harris, cornerback out of Brownsville. His interest is just beginning to grow. By the way, you can check out increased recruiting coverage on Hooker's Corner. I'll share that with you. But let me tell you a little bit about Caden Harris. 6 foot, 160 pounds, defensive back. He has scholarship offers from Alabama and Georgia. Again, this would be a huge pickup out of Haywood High School, which has a really good tradition of producing top SEC talent.
Yeah, and actually Brownsville has a weirdly good tradition of producing top talent too. If you think about it, they've produced quite a few NFL players and pro players to come through Tennessee. That not that exact county, but that area is where Reggie Cobb was from, in Haywood County over there. I know that area well. That's West Tennessee, very close to Memphis. Yeah, I think that Tennessee's got to go more for cornerbacks. He's a 4-star across the board, 6 feet. He's only 160 right now, though. Now, I know conditioning will get you up as a sophomore, but can it get you to 200?
Yeah, he's got a couple of years. These weights are really early. Another 2026 guy that I want you to know is safety Craig King Tut And yes, I've nicknamed him that. 6 foot, 180 pounds, 4-star safety, has received strong interest from Auburn and Alabama, out of Oakland High School in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. So what do you think of King Tut?
I like that. I think that would be a huge pickup for Tennessee. I think they're becoming more entertaining for safeties, because here's the thing: as more edge rushers get pressure, safeties like the chance to intercept more balls. They need that more than cornerbacks do. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for safeties in the future, forcing errant passes. Also, I say this a lot, because and you guys can call me inconsistent all day. I don't care. When I say that they overvalue Nashville prospects, they do. They undervalue Murfreesboro prospects all the time. They undervalue Murfreesboro prospects. And I think part of it is, Dave, I think when you're from those kind of smaller areas of Tennessee, like when you go to Tennessee, you really want to play for Tennessee, right?
Yes. Where are you going with this?
I'm saying he's from Murfreesboro. And so those like Murfreesboro kids, those like the non-Memphis and Nashville kids, take Memphis and Nashville out of it. The kids from the rest of the state that go to Tennessee really, really, really want to play for Tennessee. Memphis and Nashville kids are usually thinking about things larger than just wanting to play for Tennessee.
Yeah, I think Nashville's a cosmopolitan city like Atlanta. So it's the same reason that Tennessee can go to Atlanta and have success. Other schools can come to Nashville and have success. I think Murfreesboro is going to be like that. I've talked to people who live in the Midstate area. It's practically becoming the Twin Cities. So I wonder if you will have some guys that are valued differently because they're in Murfreesboro, but I still think you'll have good talent come out of that area. And let's face it, the level of football in the state of Tennessee has gone up tremendously.
It has, but you have to remember a lot of the people moving to Tennessee are from the Northeast,
right,
where the football's not great,
or the West.
The football's the football's okay in the West. It's good in California. California football is good, but like it's very
people moving. They're going to have allegiances elsewhere, I think, is what we're still.
Right. Yes, they're not going to be as loyal to Tennessee. Now, I say that, but like Atlanta has been doing this for 30 years, and they all have allegiances to Georgia. It feels like. I mean, Georgia could just go into Atlanta and get kids, even if they're not rooted in Atlanta. But Atlanta grew in a little different way than Nashville is growing. So it just grew a little bit differently. Atlanta families from like the heart of like Big Ten country, where some of the best athletes were, they all moved to Atlanta. Whereas Nashville's getting like those tech kind of fancy pants, hoity-toity people from Massachusetts coming in. So a little bit different, but I will say the other part of this is what could make Murfreesboro talent great, because what's happening, Dave? Nashville's getting so expensive. Many of the deep-rooted football talent in Nashville is moving out to Murfreesboro, isn't it? The deep-rooted Southern football talent that was in Nashville for so long.
I think they're trying to get away from that city that's exploding way too much.
Murfreesboro looks more like Nashville used to look than Nashville does, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's true. I've talked to people who've loved Nashville for years, and they go down there now. It's like, ugh. It's gotten over commercialized and over busy. And I think that would help Knoxville. I've said this. I think Knoxville's a perfect size town for a prospect from anywhere. I think you could be a rural prospect and find things to do in Knoxville. I think you could be a inner city kid and find stuff to do in Knoxville. I think it's the perfect size for recruiting.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think what actually helps a lot is Fulmer actually used to say this. If I can get him for a visit, it's good. I'm good. It's psychological. Kids think of Knoxville as very rural and country, like a lot of other SEC towns that make it from the inner city. That is, they make them a little nervous, and they go to Knoxville and they're like, oh, a little more urban than the other SEC schools, a little more urban than I thought it'd be. And I think it makes them a little more excited to play in Knoxville, honestly.
Yep. And I mean, let's be real here. We want to talk about recruiting, and I encourage you to join Hooker's Corner, because we have increased recruiting coverage there. But the overall theme here that in Tennessee's recruiting is, let's see what Georgia does. Because right now with the off the field issues, Tennessee might have some opportunities they didn't have elsewhere.
That is very true. That's a very good point. You're right. And also someone brought it up. I mean, let's call it what it is. Whether you're for or against it, it's going to help recruit with NIL and having no income tax in Tennessee, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't thought about that with NIL, but it's getting to the point where it is of that type of revenue. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. I want to be sure and thank our good friend T. Scott Jones, Banks and Jones, the show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win with Banks and Jones. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a